Aye. Okay, is that loud enough? Can everyone hear me? No, it's not loud enough. Louder? Jeff, do I need to go louder? Do I need to turn anything? Or?
We're joking, Ryan.
Oh, you're joking, are you? Oh. Of all people, I asked Cal if I was loud enough. It's always going to be a no, wasn't it? Jesus Christ. This is like doing an audience with. It's just like looking out and it's like all the people that I look up to and I'm meant to be the one on the stage. So, bear with it, eh? Wow. It is amazing seeing everyone. Yeah, have I turned proper Scouse yet? Yeah, sounds. Nah, it's amazing seeing everybody and thank you. I don't know why I'm saying, but like, Jeff will be made up and it's honestly, it's like such a boss atmosphere. It's really good. Feels like big family and that. Jeff's going to tell me something here. Oh, it's mate. Is that better?
Yeah, no, you're better.
I just didn't want you all to hear, to be fair. Okay.
Back off. Back off. Back off. Back off. Stand up.
Hi. Hi.
Stand up. Yes.
Thanks. Something's humming and it's not me, I promise. Okay, I'll start as me technician sorts with the mic out. So, firstly, it's so nice to see, I'm shaking. It's so nice to see so many old faces. And I don't mean old. I don't mean old. I wrote it, Lola. I don't mean old as in age. I mean people I haven't seen for a while. So good to catch up with how everyone is doing, and what better circumstances than one to celebrate, as it says over there, the legend that is Jeff Taylor. So I have to start the speech by saying what an absolute privilege it is to be doing this man's speech. I've genuinely felt the pressure of writing it and feel I need to do it justice, not only for the man himself, but on behalf of all the previous HODs, assistant heads, deputy heads, and anyone that's been in contact with Jeff over the years. I can't believe I'm the one standing here saying these words so that all that's happened. But yeah, I feel like I've got a due diligence to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know I did this last year when Carol left, but those numbers are about to be top trumped. And by some margin, let's put Jeff's time at Lambton School in context. Jeff started as a pupil of Spring Grove Manor, the previous name.
Grammar.
Grammar? Did I say that? What did I say? Oh, yeah, grammar. We'll go with grammar. That's what's written on the paper. Told you I was bringing up. Here we go. The previous name of Lambton. Right, let's give you some clues of the year. Here's what was going on the year that Geoffers first stepped through the Lambton gates. Okay, so at this time, Harold Wilson was the Prime Minister. Okay, just to add here, there's only been 3 Labour Prime Ministers since that time, so surely it's about for a change, yeah? Lyndon B. Johnson was the president, having taken over after JFK's assassination. Malcolm X was assassinated in New York. The Beatles released both Help and Rubber Soul. The Rolling Stones released only their 2nd album. Sean Connery played James Bond in Thunderball. And the highest grossing film of the year was none other than The Sound of Music. Does anybody want to take a stab at the year?
1964.
Oh, well, I hope you're wrong and I'm right. Because I've got 1965. We'll go with that. We'll go with it's 1965, but it could be 64, 65. Well done. How lucky Jeffers was to be a teenager in the 60s. I bet there's some stories he hasn't even told me from all those years ago. It goes without saying that young Jeffrey almost certainly went on to be the model student we all expect to see and teach. I'm sure he never got in trouble at all. It's possible Jeff may inform us on the contrary of this during his speech later. But I'm sure he left with a glistening report and undoubtedly a batch of top grade O-levels. Having reached the end of his studying at Spring Grove Grammar, Jeff then made the worst So best decision of his life, and went off to train as a teacher. Meaning that Jeff never returned in 1975, having only been away from the school for 3 years. He began teaching at Lambton, probably still Spring Grove, and he hasn't left since. Let's just take that in for a minute. Jeff was put on the payroll in 1975 and has been on it until 2022. That's 47 years later. Not that this will ever be repeated, but just to demonstration's sake, if there is any ECTs here tonight, if you plan on repeating this feat, it'll be time for you to deliver your leaving speech in this Connie Club in the summer of 2069. We'll all be here. During his time, Jeff has been in a number of positions, as you can see. And when I say a number of positions, here we go. Science teacher, biology teacher, physics teacher, maths teacher, games teacher, Key Stage 3 coordinator, Key Stage 4 coordinator, deputy head of science, form tutor, physics technician, PTA rep, year 7, 8, 9, 10, football coach, year 7, cricket coach, reprographics lead, AV manager, sound and light man, health and safety manager, union rep, logistics manager, and COVID testing coordinator. A man of many talents. For those lucky enough to know Jeff as a teacher, some of you may have actually been taught by the man himself, believe it or not. You will know that he was a master of the art. Every lesson, whether it was Newton's first law, don't heckle, it's the summer, I don't know what it is, or describing the structure of a leaf. Every lesson was like watching a Shakespearean history and comedy all rolled into one. It was genuinely something to behold. So much so that for Jeff's last ever lesson, Dr. Branch, who's in the room tonight, decided to take a seat at the back of the class so we could witness Jeff's last hurrah. Jeff was always supportive to all members of staff, but especially to those new members of staff. Ben Wilkins and I can certainly be a testament to that. I remember one of the first things he ever taught us both was a very sneaky way to get rid of the then head teacher, Dame Sue John. He said, and this is verbatim, this is actually his words, "Should she enter the back of your classroom, gents, within seconds of her stepping into your room, no matter what you're teaching, immediately announce to the class that the new topic is reproduction. And today we'll be talking about the menstrual cycle." To which he assured both of us that the head teacher would very swiftly make an about turn and enter any classroom within a 2-metre vicinity. I can't say I ever tried it, but it was brilliant advice to receive in one of our first weeks when I thought, wow, what a place to work this is. Jeff has always been around for advice, and that's why I have always given him the nickname, the Oracle. Whenever I have found myself in a professional quandary, I've sought out the counsel of Geoffers. Jeff will calmly go through the situation, the people involved, my place in it all, and will always come to a solution that should help resolve it. To not have this guidance physically in school anymore will be a huge blow for me personally. And Jeff, you're now just going to have to answer a lot of phone calls, unfortunately. Jeff can also add to his many accolades something he might call a long-term project of his, making this long-haired Northern Scally much more versed in the English language, and now at least not EAL level 3. This has been a slog. I'm sure, and throughout this speech, I'm sure some of my EAL level 1 vernacular may have crept out. But I'm sure we can have a debrief at the end with a pint and a highlighter and point out the places where I have EBIs still to this day. Anyway, he's done that good of a job that my mates back at home don't even understand me anymore. I use too many big words like because and thank you instead of ta-la. Anyway, I just wanted to finish on talking about the main man himself. We are all here today, not because of the fantastic teacher that Jeff was, which he was, or because of his superb work as the AV guy, which he also was. We are all here to celebrate the man himself. His caring, supportive nature, and his cracking sense of humour. Jeff just loves being around people and being as useful and as helpful as he possibly can be. One final story from me, which really tells the measure of the man. A few years ago, my and me now wife's house got broken into, and we had all sorts taken, cash, laptops, jewellery, passports, even some old Everton memorabilia, which I can assume was only for packing purposes. Needless to say, we were distraught and a bit shaken up by the experience. When I came back to Lambton, as the family that it is, people had very kindly done a donation and a collection towards all the to replace the stolen items. Jeff, however, went one step further, and without putting any numbers on this, he offered to write a cheque to replace everything that was lost that day. And I get a bit teary now, I genuinely cried when that happened. Jeff is a true gent with the kindest heart, and it's a pleasure to call him me mate. Sorry, Jesus, didn't think I'd get upset, Jeff. Freaking hell, mate, didn't get upset me wedding.
I'm not marrying you.
Can we get married, Jeff? Jeff always gave me this line of advice. If someone wants you to do a task and you don't quite fancy doing it, here's what you do. Don't do it so badly that it shows you're incompetent, but also don't do it that well that they ask you again. And thanks for that, Jeff, because I've not only used that in the school, but I've also used that at home, and it works a treat. Don't do the dishes at all. Well, Jeffers, you certainly didn't live up to your own motto. You have inspired thousands of students, supported hundreds of colleagues, and Jeff, as you can see, we are all so thankful for it. I love you loads, and thank you very much, everybody. I've just got some things to deliver to Jeff at this point, if that's okay. I want to ask Wayland to help me, because Wayland and T, yeah, if you can help me, because Wayland's had a massive input in this. So we're just going to go and collect some stuff and bring it out to deliver to Jeff. As the prime person of the night, Jackie Smith's going to come up next and take prime priority here. So as we get these out for Jeff, Jackie's going to come up and then we'll deliver that. Thanks, everybody. Cheers, Jeff. So I'll explain to them as they get past the Jeff here. So the first one that Wayland's got here, Wayland's been slaving away at these in school. We got a plaque dedicated to all of Jeff's time at Lambton. It's got engraved on it the times that he was at Lambton, and Spring Grove Manor as a school has been etched onto the middle of it, and that's been made from old benches from Spring Grove Grammar. And in the display case that you can see, again, Wayland's made that. That's to dedicate Jeff's time as a science teacher. And that's got his two greatest loves, biology, he starts out with that, then he got quite bored and moved on to physics. So we've got a microscope and a voltmeter from maybe like the 1950s, we think, and we've put a little plaque in there to demonstrate all of Jeff's work in Lambton. So, but there you go. So thanks everybody, and on to Jackie again.
Ryan, I'd never have agreed if I knew I was going after you. So, I don't have Jeff's talent with doggerel, and I don't have Ryan's kind of Liverpool accent and humour. So you're just going to have plain prose from me. And all I can say is, I can remember the interview when we appointed Ryan. Had I known what he would do to me now, I would have, I was very tempted. You know, one of the main reasons why we gave Ryan the job was because he told us what the job was that he'd been doing before, which was, Ryan,
Was this when I was working as Goofy?
It was, I think it was when you were working as an exotic dancer.
Oh, I didn't want to tell anyone that one. Yeah.
So, there's a talent that you didn't know. So next time, it's going to be
They didn't know that.
Sorry?
They didn't know that. I kept that hidden.
Well,
You know.
careful who you ask to do something for you. Okay, so Geoffers, this is a really a pleasant surprise, but it's a real honour. And you know, like Ryan, I'd say it's a real honour to say goodbye to the man who represents everything that has been best about Lambton. And I think Lambton over the years has been an absolutely magical place to work, and many of us here would say that. And I think Geoffers represents all that's been best of it. So how do we sum up Geoffers? Well, you'll all have your own memories, and some of them will be quite quirky and some of them will be a bit bizarre. But I do hope that you had the time either to talk to Geoffers tonight or to write to him tonight about what he's meant to you, because he is a real special man, and you will not see his like again in your working life or indeed otherwise. So here are my memories of kind of 45 years with Geoffers. There's always been a twinkle in Geoffers' eyes, hasn't there? And a penchant, I would say, for strong-minded, uncompromising, vocal, and some would even say bossy women. So many have come and many have gone, but none have escaped Geoffers' eagle eye and his acerbic wit. And it's the little aside that he makes that you really have to listen to. So I just, thought I'd have a representative sample from over years. So I don't know how many of you remember the lovely Pammy, the glamorous, immaculately groomed but intimidating biology teacher. Then there was Sharon, the head of science, with a penchant for rather risque sunbathing. And exactly, you need to ask Carol about that one. And shall we say a flexible relationship with the truth. And then there was Debbie, the volatile and lovable geography teacher. Steph, who's with us today, the only one who could outwalk him and out-argue him. She has an energy which is endless, so she could certainly do the better on him. And then I think one of the best ones was watching. I sat next to Geoffers when he was doing some technical stuff, and Rachel was on stage. Now, many of you look at Rachel and you think she's a very kind of modest and quiet and, as we all know, Norman's daughter and very proper and prim and well-behaved. But the raunchier side of Rachel came out, and I do remember Geoffers' eyes out on stalks as Rachel was dancing in some 1920s kind of underwear, I suppose, really. It was. And then, of course, there was Jean, Jeff's sidekick. And the only person that could ever quieten Jeff with... Oh, thank you. With just one look, so I'm not your height, Ryan. But of all of them, the one who dominated his affections most at school was the one that he called Sexy Sue. The rest of you might have called her Dame Sue John, but to Jeff he was Sexy Sue, the formidable head teacher. He never quite forgave her for leaving, and continued to mourn that until today. And it's my pleasure to read a letter that she has written for Geoffers tonight. So, dear Geoffers, I'm sorry I can't be there to mark this momentous occasion. Geoffers moving on from Lambton after serving there for so long as both man and boy. And Sue can be very serious, and she says this very seriously. I'd like to say a personal thanks for your generous and unconditional loyalty to both the school and to me as a leader. We didn't always agree about everything, but our trusted relationship meant that we never fell out. It seems a long time ago that I used to listen to your guitar playing on a Friday evening after school. Do you remember those days? And I don't think it was Big Norm's kind of music. I don't know if you remember, but Norm on a Friday evening would like a glass of whiskey. It wasn't quite his kind of music coming out of the staff room, but Sue certainly enjoyed it. I've always admired your creativity, your off-the-wall thinking and resourcefulness. You've inspired thousands of children during your time as a teacher, and many will have very fond memories of you, Geoff. And here's the promise. I look forward to catching up with you in the near future, perhaps at the Lensbury Club, when you are on one of your famous walks. Kind regards, Susie Darling, because he was the only person that could go into her office and say, Susie Darling, this is what's happening today. So that's from Sue. I'd like to echo what Ryan said, but Ryan has the advantage of being a scientist, and I'm certainly not. In my convent, girls didn't do physics. But the little physics I know, I owe to Geoffers. For one memorable year, I was his EAL co-teacher, and afterwards I'd often be walking to school or walking through lessons, doing lesson observations or whatever. And I think as Ryan alluded to, when somebody from management appeared, Geoff would see that as a call to arms and a challenge. And it was certainly a challenge to me to make sense of what I found incomprehensible. But, whatever Geoff has always said about all these newfangled teaching methods, they don't mean anything, or, whatever. In fact, if you have a look at the way that Geoff teaches, much of the way that he teaches is kind of what is now newfangled. He could get a job in that National Institute of Teaching they're setting up. So you could call his approach direct instruction, Geoff. That's a good term to use, good buzzword. Chunking, very good at chunking. Very good Geoffers at scaffolding. And reducing the cognitive load by building new knowledge on lived experience. Those are all things that we could associate with your approach to teaching, Geoffers. But as always with Geoffers, the joy of being in his lesson was the unique slant he took on it. So I can remember being in one lesson. I had done no harm to anybody that day. I was just doing my job. I turned up. It's a lesson on talk. Suddenly, talk, which is a physics concept about force, becomes connected to why women don't drive buses very accurately, why women shouldn't drive lorries, and then the next part of the lesson goes on to sexual positions. I did not leave. Just want to put that on the record. I didn't leave, I stayed to the end. So he was never one, and has never been one, to miss the opportunity to perform. Now, you may or may not have realised that, in those traditional end-of-term staff leaving dues, when people have to do speeches, there would always be a slight tremor if Geoffers was on the list to the leaving speech for someone. In the SLT, and certainly with Susie Baby, there was always this kind of, oh God, what's he going to say? What's it going to be like? And so where we angels fear to tread, Geoff relished the opportunity to shock, to transfix, and to traumatise his audience. But most of us would have far preferred our leaving speech to be done by Geoffers than by anybody else, because it would have been so personal and so pertinent and so gracious to us. So how can we thank Geoffers for his commitment and devotion to the school? The hours he spent doing the technical backup for school shows and productions, both for Lambton but also for the Lawrence family productions at the back there. We are all in debt to Geoffers for his calm and flappable approach to disaster and his ability to just sort it out. How many of you here have sought advice from Geoffers and his sidekick Jean when needing advice on how to deal with troubling work situations? How many of us have relied on him to represent us and trusted his ability to listen in confidence, give sound advice and work behind the scenes? I don't think any of us will know how much we'll miss him until next term and until he's gone. And not until you need him will you realise the depth of his wisdom and experience. And I think one of the things that I've always admired most about Geoffers, even though sometimes it's been quite tricky, has been that he has been willing to and committed to speaking truth unto power. You will all have personal stories of his utter kindness. Ryan's given you his. When my dad died, he had a massive hi-fi thing which was about to go on the tip, and Geoffers rescued it, spent hours putting it back together, because obviously for me it had a specific significance. But I don't know if any of you have been recently on a school trip with Geoffers. There is no better companion on a school trip than Geoffers, and I can see Lindsay laughing at this. So Steph had the great pleasure of being on a coach trip to Northumbria with Geoffers, and the coach got stuck because it went down the wrong way. It got stuck on a bridge. It wouldn't go forward and it wouldn't go backwards. You really need Geoffers on those trips because he's calm and he's unflappable, he sees the sense of humour, and he knows that eventually things will happen. I had the great pleasure, I thought I'd educate Geoffers once, so I took him to the Victorian Albert to see what was then called the Nehru Gallery of Indian Arts, full of really beautiful textiles and paintings and muslin things and inlaid furniture, and I said, God, Geoffers, isn't this absolutely stunning? He said, I think it's ghastly, but I've only come for you. Okay? So when Jeff transformed and became site staff, it kind of seemed seamless. He brought the same energy to that, and it's so nice today to see so many of the site staff here acknowledging Geoffers' contribution to the school and the kindness and the commitment that he showed them. For me, I was quite frightened when we transformed the Banksian block into the teaching school block, or the, whatever you want to call it, the ugly concrete block, or whatever you want to call it. We had to remove some incinerators in walls which had got quite a lot of asbestos on. And it was kind of knowing that Geoffers had done all the scientific background work meant that, we were not frightened of asbestos. And I really don't decry his focus on health and safety, because you don't want to be in a school where you feel unsafe, and I think he was really good on that. I suspect that next term the school will feel emptier and more solemn without him, despite occasionally appearing to be contrary. Occasionally. His kindness and decency marked his relationship with many, and many new teachers, as Ryan has referred to already. And it was really interesting, I was there when he took over the science department. Now, prior to his time leading the science department, it was scarred by what Carol will remember were called the coffee club wars, where some people were allowed to have coffee there and some people weren't. I was, even though I wasn't a science teacher. Others weren't, and they were science teachers. But under Geoffers, when he took over the department, it really became, the seat of the department that it is now, collaborative, nurturing, accepting that people would work in different ways, and a really kind of genuinely energetic place to work. So, what lies ahead, Geoffers? Now, those of you who don't know, you've only got this evening to find out, but for me, and for many of us that have known Geoffers for some time, it's his enthusiasm and joy for living that marks him out, and his approach to life. Now, if you haven't had a discussion with him about walking the railways destroyed by beaching, and I understand that some of you won't know who Beeching was, but he was a vandal, tonight is the time to find out from Geoffers where you can walk decommissioned railway lines. It's also the night to find out everything you need to know about Hounslow's past. The canals you can walk along, the 3 bridges, the ones near Southall, the railways, Hounslow's industrial past. And so if you haven't done that before, you have got 25 minutes to find that out. It's also lovely to see Paul Delackie here, and if you haven't had the pleasure of experiencing a conversation between Jeff and Paul, now's your chance, concerning hi-fi systems of the 1980s, best rock bands, guitar solos of the 1970s, and perhaps even the joys of working with Mr. Courtauld, or his early prowess as a runner and a football player. So if you haven't found out those things about Geoffers, now is the time. And I really do hope that those of us who have been very happily retired, I have to say, for some time, can see more of Geoffers from September onwards, because he will have that time to spend with us. So, those of us who have proved that you can survive without Lambton, we look forward to seeing a great deal more of you. Those of you who still remain in Lambton, Take the lessons that you have learned from him and carry them with you for the rest of your lives, because he has been a really remarkable member of staff and you will never see his like again. So thank you very much to Jeff.
I went in the toilet just before I came in here, and it's nothing to do with the speech, incidentally. I realised if you've got a prostate problem, light grey trousers is not a good idea. Fortunately, I've been sitting there with my legs crossed, and evaporation has taken its course. The last bit's not true, but I thought you'd get a laugh anyway. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Jackie, for your very kind speeches. Obviously, I agree with everything you have said. And I don't really have much to add to them. I'm going to go through this, but it's quite long, because 47 years, you know, it's so fucking long. So I'm going to stop halfway through so that you can get a drink and possibly go to the bar yourself. And then we'll get on with part 2. Right, well, the past few weeks have been marked by a number of firsts and a number of lasts. It's the first time, and probably the last, I've been made redundant. It's the first and last time I'll be doing my own leavers speech. It's not the first time I've left Lambton, of course, having left there 50 years ago, but I came back originally to do 6 weeks supply cover for the head of maths, who in those days used to skive off for 6 weeks to do the timetable. And technically, I suppose I've been on supply ever since, because I don't remember ever signing up a new contract. Bizarre. And it's the first time in almost 50 years when I won't know where I'll be come the start of next term. Clearly I will be somewhere, but it won't be setting up the AV for Mr. Davis. I use that word, yes. Right. Most leaving speeches cover the period the person has worked at the school, but in my case it starts in 1964, at which time I was in the 4th year at Cranford Junior, facing the perils of the 11 plus. Now, without any false modesty, I think it's fair to say that in the International League table of academic brilliance, I have always been solidly mid-table. Division 3. So I must thank my head teacher at the time, the wonderful Fred Hill, for supporting my cause, in spite of what I suspect was not a particularly brilliant, impressive 11 plus performance, and getting me into Springgrove Grammar, and possibly perjuring himself in the process. And thus it was I arrived in 1965, a member of One Blue, Nelson House, based in room 1, now the kitchen end of the current staff room. I will not dwell on the depressing story of the first 6 years, save to mention that Jean Kingshott got me through O-level physics and identified an unfortunate weakness in my calculations, something she called compensating errors, whereby the effects of an initial error were miraculously and wholly unintentionally reversed by a subsequent one further down the page. I should point out that I'm no longer prone to compensating errors. I still make the first ones, of course, but not the second. In today's data-led world, that would doubtless be regarded as progress. On reaching the lower six, I wound up in the form of my unforgiving biology teacher, who for reasons of anonymity must remain anonymous. One or two of you may remember that lady, PH, her initials. Me being of a sporty disposition rather than the hard-working, intelligent academic type, she felt, by the end of the year, compelled to write on my record card, "Is struggling, should leave, now." Being of a hopeful nature, as well as a sporty disposition, I ignored this advice and continued into the upper six, where my form tutor was one Grace Barr, Miss. A lady of fearsome reputation and a close friend of the then head. Miss Barr taught French, German and Latin to the top groups, and yet saw something good in me and was both supportive and encouraging of my intentions to become a teacher. And as with Fred Hill, I believe her reference for teacher training was instrumental in getting me accepted. I will not dwell on the depressing academic story and sporting decline of the next 3 years, save to mention that I was judged to be very good in both the theory and practice of education, but lousy in everything else. Thus it was I left college, trained incidentally for middle schools at a time when middle schools were rapidly losing favour, and didn't exist in Hounslow anyway. So, seeking employment, but without success, Miss Barr kindly put in a word with her friend the head and got me the previously mentioned 6 weeks supply. So, came back after the summer holiday, still on roll apparently, and entered the profession in September 75. Very junior, very probationary, and a teacher of science, maths, games, and a form tutor to 1T. During the first induction meeting with my prospective students and their parents, I was asked by a tall, intelligent-looking lad whether they were allowed to bring in sports equipment for breaks and lunch hours. In reply, I thought things like footballs and cricket bats would be okay. Javelins and shotguns might be considered inappropriate. It's got a most encouraging laugh, and thus initiated the style of humour still enjoyed by many and deplored by at least one gentleman. They say one never forgets one's first form, and in my case this is undoubtedly true, including a small kid who was a total nutter, but fully explained once you met his mother. GDPR rules apply. Early on in my career, I managed to upset the headmistress, I fancy that, Miss Margaret Coulthard by name, who announced her displeasure and rammed it home by announcing that she would not normally have employed anyone with my somewhat indifferent qualifications. Cow. Having done a few years of Key Stage 3 and 4 teaching, as we would now call it, I was promoted to person in charge of the reprographics department by the new head, at a time when there wasn't a reprographics department to be in charge of. I rapidly taught myself the fundamentals of bander machines and the dangers of alcohol addiction, ink duplicators, golf ball typewriters, unguarded guillotines, offset lidos, and not to mention photocopiers and photocopier salesmen, otherwise known as lying, cheating bastards. With one exception, John Davis, once of Nashua and later of Rico, who was a true gentleman and always did right by myself and the school. Reprographics has moved about over the years, starting and ending where it is now, but visiting room 14 and Susie Worthington's office on the way. Susie's office is the old medical room. Whilst in use for reprographics, you could still check your height and weight in there. A service now denied you, but you do get Monica by way of compensation. I know where my money's going. I will not dwell on the years of slow progress up the hierarchy, including in charge Key Stage 3 Science, Key Stage 4 Deputy Head, Junior Lab Technician, I took a career break for a year. I thought I was going to go and work in a greengrocer's, but they didn't want me. So I came back and Carol took me under her wing. Wasn't allowed to do anything to do with chemistry, thank Christ. Coming on to me being the head of department, it was quite tough getting that. I had a 5-minute interview with the head, and he said, "You got the job." And it must be noted, however, there were no other candidates. I had a mandate to listen to my staff, improve communication and cooperation, move towards a modern and more involving style of teaching, and above all, improve the sodding results. Now, it's been kindly said that I was reasonably good at least some of those. No, I thought I was a dismal, miserable failure. I'm simply not cut out for management. I'm just too nice for it, really. So, for a while, Dame Susan, then played Mrs. John, gave me a hard time when the exam results came out, but began to accept that maybe I wasn't the man for the job and that a replacement was needed. It was at this point that my life improved rapidly and dramatically, when she asked the question most of us never get to answer: "What would you like to do then?" To which I replied, "I want to look after things and be responsible for things and not people." "Very well," she said. "We will call you logistics manager. Go away and write your job description." Which I did. And here I am. Or rather was. Which brings me to the end of part 1. So get a drink and I'll be back here in about 5-10 minutes' time.
Round 2.
I see the people are beginning to return, thank you. Smokers coming in from outside. Alcoholics still at the bar. And the worried people, is he going to say anything about me? Anyway, part 2. I have some people to thank. Some of them no longer with us, some of them with us but not here, and some of them still with us and present here tonight. Thank you for coming. I'm deeply appreciative of that. So, I'm usually fairly acerbic and a bit sarcastic about teachers as a generality. Self-important, pompous so-and-sos. And that's when I was only speaking for myself. But in actual fact, teachers do a really important job, which you know you do, but as kids they really notice it. It's only sort of thinking about my speech here that I thought I really should pay a bit of homage to those people who have helped me on my journey. Oh God, that fucking word is horrible. Excuse my language. So, the great Fred Hill, I've already mentioned, and also Miss Barr. Moving on to people that many of you won't know, but some of you will. Joan Day, who was latterly the senior lab tech. She took me under her wing almost immediately I arrived in the department and looked after me as a second mother until she retired. Sadly, she died way before her time. The late Norman Lawrence, father of Rachel, who started at Lambton on the same day as me, and who rose through the ranks to be some important person around, and had a massive influence and input for the development of the school during Sue John's time. He also introduced me to amateur dramatics, which opened up a whole new world of possibility for me. For example, it was possible for me to have intimate moments with Rachel in the dark of a live stage, attempting to retrieve her radio mic transmitter from wherever on her person she had secreted it. And she secreted it in some very interesting places, I have to say. But Rachel, that will remain a secret between us. Sorry, I was just imagining fishing it out, sorry. Right. Jean Kingshop. Tonight could well have been titled Jettisoning Geoffers, were it not for the fact that she's up in Scotland walking a niece down the aisle in lieu of a father. She too has left the school without a public word of recognition, which really is inexcusable in view of her long service and loyalty. Jean, who many of you will know is the Deputy Exam Officer, have I got that right? Yeah, officer, not secretary. But who joined Lambton as a science teacher when I was in year 11, I think it was, and she taught me physics, or tried to teach me physics, and then as a member of the department kept a watchful eye on my antics, offering advice and warnings as necessary, and on one infamous occasion, watering me with a watering can to emphasise her displeasure with something I'd said or done. I didn't know then, and I still don't know now what I'd done wrong, but you get along and live with it, don't you? She put A-level physics on my timetable, much against my wishes, and we split the syllabus between us. I did all the easy stuff, and she did all the rest. For some time, I was totally rubbish at it, and for a number of years, my students suffered the consequences, for which I apologise profusely. Subsequently, however, her faith was repaid, and in the end I was usually at least 2 textbook pages ahead of the group, rather than 2 chapters behind, which I had been previously. As head of department, she watched my back and gave helpful advice on one occasion following a year 11 lesson observation, saying it had been a very good lesson, but did I realise I hadn't actually directed even a single question at one of the girls? No, I hadn't, no. No paperwork, no blue sky, no follow-up star chamber, but it was all taken on board, and I never made that mistake again. That to me what lesson observation of feedback is all about. Forget the bloody bollocks that goes with it now. She encouraged me to move up the pecking order, which I duly did, finally becoming her deputy, and later her boss. She remains a trusted friend today. I was then going to speak about Cameljit, who's not with us, unfortunately, so I'll move on to Liz Barry, who is probably certifiably bonkers. But a great teacher of low-level science, those kids for whom public exams are a nightmare. We share a passion for Spurs, hers considerably greater than mine, and we look forward to a day when they will actually win something. Liz, thanks always for being such a supportive and a thoughtful friend. You ring me up far more often than I ring you up. Carol, you joined Lambton sooner after I did, both starting as the babies in the department but winding up many years later as the governors. We've told the kids, and they believed it, that we were brother and sister. And you've always been like a sister to me for many years, always supportive, always encouraging, and always there for me and everyone else. Like Joan before you, you have been a mother figure to many young teachers coming into the department and looked after them as one of your own. And I must mention your considerable assistance and that of all the people who volunteered in setting up and running the COVID test centre and the vaccination centre. It worked so well because of everyone just mucking in and simply getting on with it. Wayland, always able to help sort out some minor or occasionally major repair job, skilled in so many ways and always too polite to tell me to naff off. You may be the last of your kind. John, Jim, Lucas, Chris, Tony, a great bunch of people to work with, almost always ready to help out whenever I need them, and almost always welcoming into their domain, and almost always good company, and supremely good at what they do, and certainly not just a group of bog-standard chair stackers and table putter-outers. And John in particular for many things, but especially helping me clear my mum's flat of furniture when she went into care. That took 2 weekends and a lot of driving around, for which he wouldn't accept anything other than a light lunch in Morrison's. And for that, I am forever in your debt, my friend. Simon Clavin, who's not here I think tonight, sent me a card, the words of which, for someone I barely know, had quite an impact on me. He's a guitarist like me, well, probably a better one in fact, but the card meant a tremendous amount. So if you see him, just tell him I said hello and thank you. And Dr. Richard Branch, who took the time to sit down with me last Tuesday and just chatted about the circumstances and let me rattle on, as I do, and get things off my chest. He was also kind enough to walk with me across the playground after the farewells in the atrium, so I wasn't on my own. If that wasn't enough, he pays me the honour of believing I know far more physics than I do, and he calls me Sir. Dame Susan, Susie darling to her male admirers, and I include myself in that exalted group. A brilliant head to work for, except if your exam results are crap. She is possessed of an iron will and a steel backbone, coupled to massive determination and looks that can kill, or at least scare the shit out of you, if she's not happy. She's also kind and thoughtful and great fun when off duty. Her contribution to the success of Lambton School is immeasurable, but sadly not recognised as much as it should be. She gave me my dream job: no people, no marking, no department meetings, and no timetable, just things, and the freedom to manage them as I thought fit. As I often said, my hobby is my job, and my job is my hobby. Sadly, I've lost both of them in one go now, but there we are. We will move on. There's always Rachel in that transmitter. I don't want you to make too much of that. I mean, I'm working for laughs here. Not pervert. Well, not all the time, anyway. I think before moving on to the very last bit of this, I've got some prezzies and cards to give out. So Carol, if there you are. If you can come forward, please, my darling. That's for you. As is that. Jackie, if you could come up, please.
I think it's some walking socks.
No. Thank you very much. And of course, who can forget Ryan? Is that right? I'll open them now. Well, I've been relatively serious for me so far, so I suppose I should end as I would normally do. Memories and anecdotes. And because I've been there since I was a kid, my anecdotes and memories start back then. The first one that really sticks in my mind is getting pushed up against the wall outside the head's office and being forcibly introduced to French kissing by my new and older and more experienced girlfriend in 1969. In retrospect, it seems distinctly unhygienic. But I have to admit I did like it at the time. For 1 year I was the Middlesex Senior 100-metre champion, representing the county at the All England Finals in Washington, County Durham, not DC. I came second in the first heat and approximately last in the next one due to an unfortunate elastic failure in the jockstrap department. Who knows what I might have done. Voted top teacher by the kids in 1980 something or other. I'm sure it was rigged, but nonetheless, welcome. Almost killing myself in front of a Year 11 class when demonstrating a mains-powered step-up transformer. And I do mean almost killing myself. Ryan, you'll be pleased to know that we've updated the risk assessments for that particular experiment. During the early days, learning my first lesson engaging brain before opening gob, or to be more accurate, don't change tack whilst in the middle of a word. So picture the scene, a hot afternoon in Lab 22 with a Year 7 group gathered round the front, when I noticed a couple of them getting restless and affecting the others. You know, stop fidgeting about! That's my teacher voice. Well, that's what I intended saying, but I thought fidgeting, no, they won't know what that is, so I changed it to mucking about. Unfortunately, I got the first effort. So yeah. There it was, a 7-letter expletive. Uproar. Stout denial. And I wasn't fired, which perhaps I would be today. Ryan has already told the story about getting rid of Dame Susan. However, I have a slightly different take on it, one which I actually used myself. She dropped into an A-level physics lesson looking at simple harmonic motion. For you non-physics people, that's pendulums and weights bashing up and down on springs. I got this round to the menstrual cycle within 3 sentences, as follows. Miss John walks in. The pendulum and the mass spring system, together with menstruation, are all examples of a regular repeating cycle. The difference is that for an ideal pendulum or spring system, the cycle will repeat indefinitely, whereas menstruation doesn't. Additionally, in the first 2 cases, there's no loss of energy, whereas in menstruation, so proud of that. And finally, Pete Truman was there, so he will actually witness and testify that he's not made up. At the time, when Key Stage 4 science was taught in blocks of 1 term at a time, 1 subject at a time, I was in the process of dismissing my group 4 kids at the end of their last lesson with me, when Peter walked in to see who we were getting. What are this lot like then? He asked. Dreadful, I said. You have to bang the stuff into their heads every lesson. Bang, bang, bang. And then turning to one truly delightful girl as she was leaving, I heard myself say, and I've had to bang this one 3 or 4 times this time already. Somehow I got away with that one. Thank you. Well, not quite finished, although I think we're over time, but what the hell. During lockdown, when I was just sitting at home a bit bored out of my brain, I thought, we need a song to celebrate what teachers are doing. Drink first. Bear with me, a slight bit of technical jiggery. My old man's a teacher. Oh, my old man's a teacher, but he's not in school today. Instead, he's virtual teaching in a disembodied way. He's not some lazy bastard who's Skyping whilst he's at home. He's working where the kid is, but he's working on his own. At first, he wasn't happy because the kids were not in class. He couldn't shout or scream and rant or kick them up the arse. He thought he might retire, but I said, just you have a think. You will not have that little shit you call the missing link. And he paused and thought again, and slowly smiled like sin. No more purple pens, he thought, they're going in the bin. No welcome by me classroom door, no corridor to own. No brain-dead little morons, no more confiscated phones. So now he's got his PC on the table in his shed. He hasn't got a virus, but he's got a mask instead. Although he hasn't got a clue about what he's meant to do, he's working very, very hard and he presumes the kids are too. He's trying to teach science, but the practicals are crap. He hasn't got a test tube or any other stuff like that. He did bring home a Bunsen, but no matter how he try, the Bunsen wouldn't burn a thing cause the shed's got no gas supply. Biology, we must agree, has been the road to hell. And human reproduction hasn't gone down very well. His efforts to describe the act were judged as very poor. He was asking the mums and dads to help by shagging on the floor. But Dad has learned his lesson and he'll stick to what he knows. He'll start by teaching physics and we'll see how physics goes. Centripetal motion is the topic as I speak. And going round in circles is all he's done this week. Now, I wouldn't say he's bonkers, I wouldn't say he's sane, because with all this distant learning, he's really felt the strain. So if you meet a teacher who looks like he's gone mad, if he's walking round in circles, it's probably my old dad.